Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the latest in our special series of lockdown webcasts that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly to keep everybody connected and to hear from some of the leaders in the industry. And I'm delighted to say that we've got someone from the very, very top today, all the way from the US joining us. It's Frank Del Rio, who is, of course, the president and chief executive of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, which encompasses Norwegian Cruise Line, Regent Seven Seas and Oceania Cruises. So Frank, we're delighted you've spared the time to join us. Thank you very much. It's early where you are, so I'm going to crack straight on. I wanted to ask you, first of all, you were speaking yesterday at the Resilience Council, and you were talking, people were talking about seeing a few more positive signs. We've been in this situation for 90 odd days, but we're starting to see a little easing of the restrictions. And I know you'd said that actually there has been great harm to the economies of the world. And actually you said that the cure is often worse than the disease, and that needs to stop. So do you feel very much now that we need to move forward with our businesses?
I think we need to move forward in a cautious manner. It can't be all or nothing. The disease is still a threat. It's always someone else's problem until it becomes your problem. And I just learned yesterday that a dear friend is in the hospital, has been there 3 weeks with COVID-19. And so that really hits home.
Yeah.
But we can't go from one extreme to the other. I'm sorry, Lucy, that's my home line. I can't stop that one from ringing.
That's okay.
It'll stop in a few seconds. We have to take care of those people in nursing homes, those people who have deficient immune systems. We have to be selective, not one size fits all. So we have to regain some momentum, and we have to do it very smartly. And I'm afraid that many authorities around the world are not being smart about this. Clive Jacobs yesterday mentioned this several times, in that we have to be smart about this. We have to be selective. But yes, we do have to open the economy as it makes sense to do so, because at the end of this, we will have nothing to go back to if we completely destroy the world's economies.
Yeah, and obviously lots and lots of livelihoods at stake as well in the cruise sector. So in terms of a restart then, Frank, I know you haven't got a crystal ball, you can't say exactly when, but in terms, you have said and gone on record saying it would have to be a gradual restart, and you would, I know you've got 28 ships in total, but you would be looking, you've said, to just introduce a few at a time, maybe 5 a month. Is that something you still think would be the right approach?
I do. This is a company and an industry, quite frankly, was running 100 miles an hour that took decades to build. And literally overnight, we came to a screeching halt and we dismantled the whole thing. So to think that we can go from 100 miles per hour to 0 and then back up again is fantasy. So yes, I believe that in our particular situation, bringing back 5 vessels a month, 3 at the Norwegian brand, which has 17 vessels, 1 at Oceania, 1 at Regent, over a 6-month period, assuming that the world is open. And that's a big assumption. We visit nearly 500 ports around the world, and to assume that every port is going to be open when you want it to be open, I also think is a fallacy. So we think it'll take at least 6 months. A lot depends on how ports open around the world. A lot depends on whether there is a second wave this coming winter or not. One of the concerns that I have is that I see 2 events converging on one another. The fall, autumn, when we believe that the authorities around the world will be comfortable enough, we'll have the protocols in place that they're looking for, will coincide with the second wave if it comes, when the start of the flu season begins in the October-November time period. So I'm very concerned about the conflux of those 2 curves coming together at a bad time. But once we start, yes, it'll take at least 6 months to get back in operation fully, which we hope to do soonest.
Yeah, and you meant, and of course you're right, it will depend on when ports open. And actually I was talking to Richard Fain the other day, and he was saying that that's why his private islands initially are going to be really important. Would that be the same for Norwegian as well, or for your brands?
Yeah, I think so. You know, we have the luxury of having two private islands. We have
Yeah.
one in the Bahamas and we have one in the Western Caribbean. And we have developed itineraries, for example, that leave Miami or leave Tampa or leave New Orleans, for example, and call just on our two private islands. They're very different experiences. One is pure beach, great fun, sun and the fun and all that. And the other one is more ecotourism in the Western Caribbean. So yes, I would believe that would be a start. But when you have 28 ships like we do, you cannot rely on two islands to fully fulfill consumer demand. But look, ports around the world are opening. The Greek islands are opening, and that's a big start for us. That's a very big catalyst, and I believe it'll be a catalyst also for the Greek islands themselves. As you know, back a few years ago when the Greece was having some difficulties financially, a lot of tourism left. And then when we had some uprisings in neighboring countries, the whole Greek island ecosystem took a big hit for tourism. And I think, believe it or not, this might be a silver lining for that region of the world, because if it opens up first, demand will rush to there, and it could be quite a lift for them. So I'm happy for the Greek islands.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, a lot depends on governments, but I know you've also said that probably the key priority is getting consumer confidence back, because obviously everywhere could open, you could run your ships again, but if people aren't confident to go on board, and I know you guys are doing so much work with all the authorities, you know, to introduce new protocols that will make people feel safer. So can you update us at all on the kinds of things you're looking at across your fleet?
Lucy, you're absolutely right. You know, getting the authorities to turn on the switch and give us the all go sign is a one-time event. We hope that comes sooner than later, but it's a one-time event. Keeping our target customers, our past guests, engaged and confident that they're going to be healthy and safe and have a great time on board the ship is going to be a constant effort for a long, long time. And that's where the priority is. We're not looking at getting our ticket punched, so to speak, as an optical illusion or doing the minimum required to get the authorities to lift the ban from cruising. I want to do whatever I have to do to be able to look at my grandchildren in the eye, my 88-year-old mother in the eye, and say, come on board. It's safer than ever to come on board a Norwegian Cruise Line holding vessel, because we've done all these things. Brilliant. So what have we done? We've engaged one of the world's top experts in public health, in Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the former American Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration. And he is going to lead a blue ribbon panel of experts across multidisciplines, from physicians who are experts in infectious diseases, to those who are experts in disinfecting venues, to technology experts. We're going to deploy the full gamut. Lucy, we're going to throw the kitchen sink at this.
Yeah, but it's so important.
We don't, this virus evolves, and we're learning everything, a lot of things every day. And so we want to make sure that we have every single base covered. It's going to be a layered approach. If we don't find you here, we're going to get you here, or we're going to get you, or we're going to get you, and we're going to prevent outbreaks on board. We're going to have this. We believe, if done correctly, Lucy, that a ship, because it is a controlled environment, will be the safest place in the world, much safer than if you are in the general population in your own community. And so we are going to be doing this layer by layer. It's going to take some time. That's why I don't believe we'll be back until sometime in Q4, early Q4, hopefully, because we want to do this right. And we're going to do this for the long term, because we cannot afford, our company or the industry cannot afford one more case of COVID-19 on board.
Yeah, I mean, I was really interested when you said that yesterday, that you thought they'd be the safest place. And playing devil's advocate, Frank, there will be people who have seen the outbreak in the spotlight on cruise ships. That's where it sort of started. There was a lot of media attention. And I think there will be some people that would need some convincing of that, that cruise lines are going to be the safest. They might at the moment think they are the least safe place to travel. So how do you get, I mean, I believe you when you say it, but it's another thing getting that message across to consumers, particularly your non-loyal cruisers. These are your new to cruise customers that you've been fighting tooth and nail to try and convince people for years that a cruise is a good option, and now they're going to be nervous. So how do you do that?
Well, you have to build step by step momentum. So you start with our travel agency partners who have the trust of the local community. We have to be able to convince them that it's safe for their customers to come on board. And so I'm sure we'll have fam trips more than ever before. We will have empty cabins so they can come on board. Before, we never had empty cabins. So we will start there. We'll start with our loyal pass guests. And over time, over the first few months, when all the news will be focused on what's going on cruise ships, if we can demonstrate that we can operate safely, that people can still have fun on board cruise ships, we will build momentum. And that's what the industry needs today, is momentum. I told you how we went from 100 miles per hour to a dead stop, and now we have to slowly begin to come back to where we once were. It's going to take time, but I'm confident that the entire ecosystem, the suppliers, the travel agent partners, our loyal guests, will get the ball rolling.
Okay, and that's, I mean, obviously that's what my readers will be keen to hear about, because they are going to be the ones with the customer right in front of them, having to do that explaining, clearly getting them on board so they can see the new protocols and the procedures you've introduced will be important. But what else will you do? Will there be new training? Will there be new, a much bigger focus on health and safety for the travel trade to impart to their clients?
Well, there's going to be a great emphasis on screening. We're hoping that our experts tell us that within the next 60 to 90 days, testing for COVID-19 will be ubiquitous, that it will be as common as going to the pharmacy and getting a pregnancy test. And so that's going to be a big game changer if we can test people as they come on board. The crew, for example, because they are on board for months at a time, they will be tested and tested regularly. So we're confident that we can control the crew population. But of course, having 3,000, 4,000 guests come on board every 7 days or so presents a challenge. There's going to be greater emphasis than ever on cleaning and disinfecting. We will have more crew on board dedicated to disinfecting the vessels and cleaning the vessels. We'll have more medical staff on board. We will have a number of cabins, depending on the size of the vessel, 20, 50, 100 cabins that will be isolated in the event that there ever is a need to isolate people because we expect or we suspect that there may be something wrong. But as I said earlier, we will be using technologies, whether it's ultraviolet or better systems to filter the air. We will be practicing social distancing in one way or another. Look, in everyday life before COVID-19, cruise life on board a ship reflected what life was on board land. People tend to want to do the same kinds of things, just in a different environment. And so I suspect that if we are going through social distancing efforts today on land, that you will have to do something similar once you get on board ship. And of course, this is not permanent, Lucy. We've all heard that within optimistically 6 months, pessimistically 12 to 15 months, there's going to be a vaccine. And in the middle, there's going to be therapeutics. And we're all going to learn how to be more socially responsible for ourselves and for the communities around us. So we're going through a shock right now. In the Western world, this has all been about 90 days old. And we're coping well. The world hasn't come to an end. There have been, unfortunately, more casualties than there needed to be. But I'm a big believer in mankind. We want to survive. We want to succeed. We want to have fun. And I'm confident that we will learn to do that in a very passionate and empathetic way.
Oh, well, it sounds like you are going 100 miles an hour with your plans to try and beat this. So that's fantastic. We read a story this morning. I don't know if you've seen it because you've only just got up, but the Bahamas cruise line, which is only much smaller than yours, I understand that, but they've come out with all their plans, including saying that they're going to sail at sort of 40% less capacity and take out a couple of decks of passenger cabins, half the number of people on transfer buses. And they're saying this could be a blueprint for the rest of the industry. I mean, you've talked us through some of the things that you're planning, but what do you make of those ideas by the Bahamas cruise line?
I have not read that. Look, the basic business model of the cruise industry is that every ship goes full. The
Yeah.
question is what price? It's a fixed cost business. And so to suggest that overnight you're going to take out 40, 50, 60% of the inventory and not sell it might be a very short-term solution to get the wheels moving,
Yeah.
get momentum going. But that is not sustainable, Lucy.
Yeah.
Whoever tries to do that will go out of business, not because of COVID-19, but because there's just not enough revenue coming in because there's not inventory to sell. So that is not a long-term strategy. That could be a very short-term strategy to, as I said, get momentum going. But
Yeah.
in the long term, we've all invested billions and billions of dollars in these magnificent vessels. And it requires a certain amount of revenue to support that investment. And you're not going to be able to do that if you're only selling half your inventory.
Yeah. When you mentioned their prices, and I mean, it's a key point, isn't it? Because all the measures you've talked about, Frank, are going to be costly. You know, having more cabins for, or more people on board to clean. I mean, all these things are adding cost into the proposition. So do you anticipate ultimately prices going up to cover the cost of these new measures? And I appreciate initially we may see some good prices to encourage people on board, but what do you think will happen with the cost of cruising sort of medium to long term?
Well, I think in the short term, you're going to have demand pressure, so prices will stay low. And by the way, I don't think there's a direct relationship between what your costs are and what your pricing is. Pricing is what a customer is willing to pay, and cost is how well an operator can discharge their responsibilities. The costs that I'm talking about implementing are not that significant in the whole scheme of things. But look at what the alternative is, Lucy. Right now, I have zero revenue.
Yeah.
Zero revenue. And so I'd rather incur additional costs and be able to operate and be able to improve my bottom line from what it is today. Today, it can't be any worse. It's zero. And like I said, over time, these measures are going to evolve. We will learn how to live with COVID at sea, like we did like we are doing on land. And I think over time, let's not forget that this is a race against time, a race for the vaccine to appear, a race for therapeutics. So 2 years from now, which seems 10 lifetimes to go, but 2 years from now, all this will be over one way or the other. We will have a vaccine. All these things we're talking about be in the rearview mirror, and we get on with our lives. But in the short term, and I believe it will be less than 2 years, but in the short term, we will have some pain. But I will assure you that whatever pain we have in order to re-engage the public, to re-engage our travel agent partners, will be less pain than we're going through right now. I mean, our travel agent partners are dead in the water. People aren't traveling on ship or on airplanes or on hotels. Let's not forget them. Everybody focuses on what happens to the cruise lines and the airlines and the hotel chains. Those are big companies. In the last 45 days, my company has raised over $3 billion in fresh capital to keep us afloat. I doubt that many mom and pop travel agents are able to raise anywhere near the kind of capital they need to stay afloat. So we have to come back quickly for the entire ecosystem of the cruise industry, not just the cruise lines. It's the travel agents, it's the suppliers, it's the port agents, it's the shore excursion people around the world. We've got to come back. We've got to come back for them.
Yeah, that's a really good point you make. Just while we're on your financials, just so you can, reassure people, because there was that story that we all had to report on where you'd said, the disruption from the pandemic and the, debt maturities over the next year were going to raise substantial doubt over your ability to remain as a going concern. That worried us all. But then within days, you then announced that you'd raised this money and got this new investment. So can you now just be, to reassure people, is that enough to see you through? Will you be needing to raise any more? And how long do you think it will last you?
Bad news sells more newspapers than good news. And that morning, when that headline came out, which was, by the way, a technical requirement of our chartered accountants, they had to say that. That afternoon, we raised $3 billion, but you never heard about that in the afternoon edition of the newspapers, unfortunately. But yes, we have the longest runway now of any of the major cruise companies. We believe that we can sustain ourselves for longer than 18 months with zero revenue, which is longer than anybody ever suspects this will go on. So I am beyond confident that Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings will be one of the success stories coming out of this horror story.
Good. I'm pleased, and thank you for clearing that up. Just in terms, I mean, you talked about you hope it will be, less than 18 months, then you will, and people are starting to see forward bookings, and we'll talk about that in a second. But in terms of the size of your business, Frank, you've got a lot of ships already. You've got a lot on the order books. So do you anticipate, I mean, I think you actually said, I think you went on record saying that you don't see that. Your new build changing it at all. You were saying that you think that's, you don't envisage that changing. So do you think the size of your company will change? Will you have to, delay some orders? Will you have to retire or sell some ships? Or what do you think will happen in terms of the overall size?
As you know, we have 9 vessels on order, 6 for Norwegian, 2 for Oceania, and 1 for Regent. The good news is that none of them come until 2023. So I have quite a bit of time when I don't want more inventory to get ready for them.
Okay, so that's lucky.
Lucy, I'm not too worried about the ship that comes in 2027. By that time, this will all be just a memory. We have the youngest fleet of the major cruise lines. So our oldest ship is still 11, 12 years away from even being considered to be retired. And by the way, that vessel, the Norwegian, complete refurbishment in January and February, right before the COVID-19 hit. So that ship is literally brand new, better than new. But look, what I think will happen is there's no question there's going to be casualties in this war. I think that certain brands will go out of business. I think certain cruise ships that are on order will not be delivered. I think that marginal ships that were, operating at a slight profit may not operate at a profit any longer in this more, demand constrained environment. And so I think that there will be inventory leaving the system. I'm very confident that the combination of only having 28 ships compared to some other companies that have many more, having the youngest fleet in the industry, which means more balconies, more of the venues that people want to enjoy. You've been in our new ships with the racetrack on top of the vessel and the computer systems and everything else, the Galaxy Pavilion, and the 9 vessels on order.
We just lost Frank.
Survive, but to succeed very well in the new environment ahead of us.
Okay, so some capacity will come out of the cruise industry generally, but it won't be from the Norwegian Cruise Holdings fleet, you're saying. Okay, all right, that's good to know. I mean, I was thinking particularly, one of the sad things was you just took delivery of Regent Splendor very recently, just in February, and of course, you haven't really had the chance to showcase that ship or for agents to see it. I mean, that's, it hardly got going before this all happened.
Yeah, that's a shame because she is the most luxurious cruise ship ever built. I thought her sister ship, Explorer, when she came out in 2016, had that billing, and she did at the time. But her name fits her well. She's a splendid vessel. The art collection on board is second to none. Just the most beautiful ship you ever saw. And unfortunately, just when days after we had her gala inauguration, here in Miami, where Christy Brinkley, the supermodel, was the godmother, the suspension occurred, and so there are tens of thousands of people out there who had their vacations on Splendor canceled this year, and I know they're eager to see her once we're back in operation.
Okay, all right. I'm conscious of your time, Frank, but just before we go, let's talk. I know you say you've got zero revenue, but that's not. I mean, you are doing some new business. I think most companies are saying they're seeing a bit. So I wonder if you could just give us a snapshot, across the 3 brands, is Is luxury selling better? Is that holding up better than mainstream? What kind of thing is booking? What kind of people? I know it's early days, but let's look at the green shoots. What are you seeing?
Remember, I'm an accountant by heart, Lucy. So when I say zero revenue, revenue is recognized when you actually sail. So we do have cash coming.
Yeah.
People are buying cruises, but we can't recognize it as revenue until we actually provide the sale. Look, we've said in our earnings call just in the last 2 weeks that we are within historical ranges of our 2021 load factor compared to 2020 at this time last year, or in 2019 and 2018. So that tells you two things. One, we were really well booked before the COVID-19 crisis hit. And during the crisis, during the last 10, 12 weeks, business has been better than you'd expect, given that a lot of travel agents have closed shop, at least temporarily. We have stopped our sales and marketing machine from operating. The entire fleet is laid up, and you know all about the bad press. So if that doesn't tell you the resiliency of this industry, of our travel agent partners, of our past guests, of new guests, people who've never been on a cruise ship before are still booking. Now, are they booking at the same rate as if this had not occurred? No, because we are not yet taking new bookings at the same rate that we need to sustain that year-over-year comparability. But taken as a whole, all the things that have happened, the fact that we are still taking bookings, the fact that the load factor for 2021 is within historical averages is very good to see, and gives us encouragement, gives us hope that as soon as the no sail order is lifted, you're going to see the same kind of reaction in the cruise marketplace as you've seen when the pubs and the restaurants open up, when the stores open up, when the beaches opened up. There's a rush. People have muscle memory, Lucy. We want to get back to what we were doing before. And part of what we were doing before all this happened is going on a cruise. That's not going to change. So we need to get the authorities to be smart about this, review our protocols, let us sail when it's safe to do so. And we're assured that we're going to be able to provide a very safe environment to bring everybody on board. There goes that nasty phone again, Lucy. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So it's going to be terrific. And it's just a matter of time. Hopefully just a few more months, no more than that, before all the pieces come together. Again, remember, it's only been 90 days.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable the transition we've all had to go through. I've never been in your, I think your bedroom before.
It's my son's bedroom. I've got dinosaurs and Lego. It's
I was wondering about your taste in art there back there, but I see the dinosaurs now. But yes, it's been remarkable, and here we are. We're still functioning, we're still working, and we're still pushing through. And no little virus is going to keep us from doing what we do best. Okay.
Frank, just finally, you've talked there about the wider picture. You've talked about the effect it has on crew, on travel agents. You're not just thinking of yourself, but as a leader, how hard has the last 10 weeks been? What would be your message to people who are running a business? Perhaps you said yourself, these sort of small travel agents who are desperately trying to keep their business going. And as a leader of a big company, have you got any advice or message to them?
I take great solace in England's all-time greatest leader, Winston Churchill, when he said, when you're going through hell, keep going. And that's what we have to do. We can't give up. I think the worst is behind us. I think we have to focus on readying ourselves for our comeback. We have to be patient. We have to be strong. Now, that's easier said than done. When there's no food on the table, all those words are empty. And so we're doing everything we can to help our crew, help our employees. We've had to furlough over 700 people in order to guarantee the future of the company. But we hope to bring them back in the next 60 days or so. We monitor them. We make sure that everything is well. We're paying for their health insurance, because there's nothing worse than not having health insurance during a health pandemic, for God's sakes. And so, look, you can't give up. you spent your whole life building a business. I've spent almost my entire adult life building up the 3 brands that we operate. And as I said earlier, it took only weeks to dismantle it. I'm not going to give up. It's just not in my DNA, and I don't think it's in the DNA of most business people to give up. But they have to be resourceful, and above all else, they have to have faith that that we will, when one door closes, another one opens, and we will get through this.
Okay, well, on that note, I'm so genuinely grateful for your time, Frank. It's a delight to talk to you. We wish you all the best with your 3 brands. I'm sure the UK travel trade will be getting behind you when you are eventually allowed to get back operating. So for now, Frank Del Rio, thank you very much for joining us.
Bye-bye. Thank you.